So, this is Chris. Chris, tell us a little bit about you. Those of us that's not me. That I know everything about you.
Oh wow!
I'm joking.
I know.
I don't know.
Yeah, my name's Chris Miller. My friends call me Grizz. Mm-hmm. But I'm actually North Carolina native, but I've lived all around the world. My grandpa was in the military. My dad was in the military. My stepdad was in the military. So I spent all my elementary school years in North Carolina. I spent all my middle school years in Puerto Rico. I
did not know that.
No,
so
see, we are. We're already learning. I spent all of them, and I don't speak fluent Spanish, but I did develop an appreciation and an affinity for that culture, mm-hmm. and the food and the music. I did hear a lot of Ricky Martin in those years.
Hello.
I don't actually own any Ricky Martin records.
Little did you know we were hearing lots of Ricky Martin over here, too.
And then as soon as I was done with middle school, I moved to Alaska. I did all my high school in Alaska.
Wow.
And I'm kind of giving you the long form here, but just different. Just the culture shock aspect, mm-hmm. and then music was so much a part of my development because it was like one of the constants where everything was changing. So I did all my high school in Alaska, moved back to North Carolina, did a little bit of college, got a crazy scholarship, one of 5 in the nation to study architecture, hated it. Said, no, dude, I'm doing music. I switched it out to a general arts, did that for like a semester, and I was like, I got to get where the music is, which at that time it was not, at least as far as I was talking to people, it was not Nashville. And this is when MySpace was huge, so it was like you could have a career based on MySpace plays. And I had a lot of MySpace plays, so I moved my butt out to Portland, Oregon area. I was technically in Newburgh, and then actually lived out in Oregon for like 6-7 years, which was just literally for me, that was my college. My 20s up to mid-20s were spent there, and that was all the highs and lows of my musical education were there.
It's a good spot for it.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, it was a trip. But I live here in North Carolina now with my wife and our son, who is just a year and a half, and I'm a part of the Cageless Birds Collective. Mm-hmm. I've been a part of the Cageless Birds community for 7 years. So this is going on the longest place I've ever lived. I love music. I love writing songs. I have always been a highly visual artist leaning person as well. So I do a lot with actually photography, videography, and I roast coffee. I started Maker Coffee through our collective, and I've started raising people up through that. And then I love people. So I do a lot of pastoral care, discipleship, counseling type stuff, even as a part of my job. But I'm doing something with the arts every single day. I just can't get away from it. Yeah. It chases me down.
I know. Like my people that I know, I will not name names, are always like, what's wrong with you? You can't hold down a job. Like all my like serious jobs I get, it's like I could do it for a couple years and then I quit because I'm like, I got to do something creative, So that's great. Yeah, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I spent a lot of time in Venezuela for a few years.
I did not know that, no. See, I didn't claim to know everything about you.
I know. I was
hoping to learn some things.
So, yeah, from when I was like 17 to 19 or 20, I would go down for twice a year for like 3 weeks and just play music and hang out. So I had a lot of friends down there.
So it was just purely recreational?
No. For the church that we were with, they had a team that would go down there. And so my first year going, I really wanted to go, so I paid for my way to go, which was like a stretch.
Wow.
Because it was like $2,500. But it was
man.
for 3
How old
weeks.
Were you?
17. So
that was a lot of money.
I worked a lot, and then I asked my grandma a lot. And then, people that I knew kind of donated towards it. And so that was the spring. And then in the fall, they were like, can you please come back? And I said, no, I can't come back. There's no way. I tapped everybody out. And there's just, I wish I could. And they're like, well, if we paid your way, could you come back? And I was like, absolutely. So they did that 6 times. So I got to go every spring and fall for like 3 weeks.
Wow.
So, yeah, I learned Spanish pretty well.
Okay.
But now I'm like...
Un poquito?
Yes.
Sí, más o menos.
Más o menos.
Sofrito.
Chalupa.
Goya.
Yeah, It's so rusty now. So, oh gosh, I just learned so much about you.
Oh,
Let's go into
Let's do it.
Some records, I guess. So, tell me about the first. Did you grow up around records and vinyl?
Man, I've been so excited. Just pause to say, I'm so glad you're doing this podcast, and I feel so excited to talk about it because nobody asked me these questions.
I know,
and there's just so much. I know you feel the same way. There's like this rich history there that if I just start pulling it's like pulling records out of sleeves. You're like, where do I start and where do I end?
I know. I like, for me, a huge part of it is like, I don't know if you read this post that I did, but like the last huge record sale I did, it was 15,000 records. I had to rent a huge truck and everything, and like when I was driving the truck home that night, like I was just praying about, like, it was the most incredible thing because I felt like so many people in the community had like come out, and I had made all these relationships with people, and it was this huge thing that was just so organically, grown. And I, God, I felt like He was saying, you remember the first time you held a record and you felt something like, I was there, I was like, oh my gosh. So, and I cried for a while.
Wow.
So, but yeah, and so I was thinking that, I was like, man, that is such a special time when and it sounds silly to people that don't collect records, but
yeah,
like the first time you hold a record and you're like, man, like there's something to this, and there's a connection, and you never lose it. It's like,
that's what I was going back to, and I didn't realize how visceral it actually felt. And then there were pieces where I was like, oh, I don't remember, but then the memories would start coming back, and I remember standing in certain like places holding it for the first time. Like I remembered the first time I held Stevie Wonder Music of My Mind, and it was $6, and it said As Is, and it looked immaculate to me, and I was like, I'd never even heard of this record. Yeah. And God, like, think about how many homes I've listened to that record in, or like different climates and temperatures, or people with me. So my first memory with vinyl, I was trying to, did you ask me that, or did you say?
No, I don't know if I asked you, but that was one that I told you to think about.
Oh, yes. Growing up around music, like, I've always loved music, and I knew that my parents loved music. Now, my parents were divorced when I was really young, so I would sometimes get visits with my dad, and he was always playing albums for me, but they were tapes. I remember they were like, it was like Red Hot Chili Peppers on cassette. It was like Crash Test Dummies, remember them?
Oh, yeah.
Once there was this boy who... And it was just fascinating. Or like hearing Pearl Jam for the first time in his Jeep Cherokee. Like, gosh. I remember that stuff, but it was always cassettes.
Yeah.
And I do have memories of like rifling through my grandparents' attic, which they live in the same house, and I still look through old books and stuff when I go to their house. I'll be there next week, and I always am like, I wonder if I'll find some interesting old book. But I remember being like visiting my grandparents and going through the attic and finding a box and finding Elvis records that were like my grandparents. But I didn't have this like visceral experience of being a kid and like my parents pulling out a record and being like, let's listen to it, like my son will have.
Yeah. I didn't even see a record till I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8 with my aunt, because we didn't have a record player or anything. So
man,
it's a miracle I'm into this.
but I spent like so much childhood money on cassettes and then CDs, and I remember the experience of opening the cassette. It's like I loved unfolding all the artwork, like and stretching it out, putting it back in there just right, if you didn't do it right. The first vinyls that I ever legit purchased, I lived in Alaska, and I had to order them through the mail, and I bought Finch What It Is to Burn, which I have no idea if you have any context for this record, but this was like post-hardcore pop-punk dream record right here. I bought this record by The Starting Line, which this guy's, the singer's still making music. He's got the Project Vacationer. You can have the best of me. We got older, but we're still young. This may not appeal to anybody who's listening to this, but I loved this band when I was like 16 years old.
So these are probably like originals, right?
This is the original press. Like, this is crazy. Probably worth something.
It's probably worth some money.
I only put a needle on it for the first time recently.
That's so cool.
I would sit down and listen to a track over and over, and I would tab out with dashes and dots what the guitar on the left channel and the right channel were doing, because all the guitars were stereo panned. But I bought this in 2003.
I didn't know you could do that when I was that age, Like, that is so cool.
So even then, like, I had no context for wax. I didn't have a way to play it, but I was like, oh, but to hold it in my hands.
Yeah.
The first legitimate vinyl experience I had, is this skipping ahead too much?
You do whatever you want. I love it.
I had moved out to Portland, which I was told was Portland. I technically was like in the suburbs, like 30 minutes south. And I had sold my car. I sold everything to get out there. I move into this apartment with a bunch of other musician guys. A room opens up, and this guy stops by one day. He goes, "Hey, I have this record. Do you want it?" And I was like, "I don't have a way to play it, but sure. I think I've heard that band before. I would really like it." And it was this Starflyer 59 record, Leave Here a Stranger. The artwork on this was actually like, it's a photo from the Star Wars shoot. Like, this was actually from on location during the filming of Star Wars. But this is a Tooth and Nail record.
Yeah.
When he gave it to me, it was shrink wrapped, and it was autographed by Jason Martin of Starflyer 59. I put it on a shelf in my room, and I would look at it before I went to sleep every night. It was like the only piece of art I had.
Yeah.
When I first put a needle on this record, which is a whole nother story, I fell in love. This is one of my favorite records of all time.
All right.
This record is so rare and out of print now, but I've worn it out.
That is so funny.
It's like I probably should never pull it off the shelf because it's quote unquote collectible. But I'm like, no, dude.
No,
this is like,
listen to it,
this is
man.
the first vinyl I think I put on for my son. I was like,
wow,
this is gonna be your first experience.
That was a huge thing for me.
Oh,
the first one I put on for Noble was, oh gosh, I think it was Led Zeppelin 3, and the first one for Canon was "Times They Are Changing" Bob Dylan. So,
well, you really gave him an education.
I know.
I'm still in the obscurity over here with these records.
No, those are good. I mean, they're not obscure to you. I mean,
no, that's real.
Great, man. So that is a great answer to that first question. I don't even know where to go. So I was going to ask you, one of them was like, I don't know if I put this in the notes, but what was the first album you bought with your own money?
Yeah.
That could be cassette, that could be CD, that could be whatever.
Oh, man. Okay, that's where I couldn't. That's where I can't, like, I literally have bought so many albums in my life. Not to cheat my way out of that question, but
no, that's fine.
I remember, like, I know that those vinyls were the first vinyls I bought, but like, it was a cassette. It was probably like a DC Talk cassette or something. Like,
well, see, like, my parents would buy me music if that was at the Christian bookstore.
It was the Christian bookstore. It was me looking for the cool, like, the most interesting looking spine or like cassette cover. I remember, like, they were on Forefront Records, and all the Forefront cassettes had a yellow and black spine with the same font.
Yeah.
But I had heard, I think it was like a DC Talk cassette because it was a Christian bookstore.
Well, like, for me, my parents would buy me, if it was there, that was their rule. If it was there, they would buy it for me. If it was anywhere else, I had to buy it myself. Man. So that's how I discovered Bob Dylan, was Saved.
Wow.
That record was there. And it wasn't a record. It was, I think it was a cassette that I had. And they bought it for me. And so I love that album. Everybody hates it.
That's funny. That was your entry point.
Yeah, and I loved it. And then when I heard it early on, I was like, okay. This is better. But I still like that record. It's nostalgic for me. But my first one, because it wasn't at the Christian bookstore, and it was a bad album with explicit lyrics.
Oh, what was it?
It was Nellyville by Nelly. And
not Nelly Furtado, though.
No, not Nelly Furtado. This is Nelly, Cheek Band-Aid Nelly.
Oh my gosh.
And shortly after that, I was like, why did I buy this? All my friends were buying it. It was cool. But man,
I remember the first cassette that I wanted to buy. Like, I can go back here. I was probably like 7 years old, 8 years old, and I went over to my friend's house. She had MC Hammer's the record with Can't Touch This on it. It was a cassette, and she didn't care about it. I just remember she was just laying on her floor, and every time I would go over to their house, I would ask if I could listen to that record, and I would put it in her boombox, and I would listen to it. And I was like, I feel like I asked her if she would give it to me, and she never did. But that was the first record that I was like, this is cool. Like, I wish this was my record. And what I've always loved about discovering albums, like, I used to love to go to those Christian bookstores and just go to the alternative section, or go to like a Kmart and just put on headphones and just hit play on an album and just go through tracks. Like I love how giving into like a body of work or investing in it affects the way you hear things. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I remember hearing a rock album with a string section that opened the album.
Yeah.
For the first time. I was never gonna like put on classical music, but something about hearing it in that context.
Yeah.
Just opened my ears to hear like cellos, and to this day, like that's one of my favorite instruments. Is like just to hear a cello section on a record. But I think about Stevie Wonder records that I've listened to, like the ones you would think of, like Songs in the Key of Life, or for me, an album like Music of My Mind. Like you give into an album like that, and it takes you on a journey, and it kind of opens your mind to what's possible, like even within storytelling. One of the most random records I ever just picked up that is one of my favorites to date is this Linda Ronstadt Retrospective. This is the first record I feel like I bought at like a Goodwill.
Yeah.
And to this day, it's one of my absolute favorites.
I think I remember you telling me that, talking about how that was the one, if you had to like, if your house was burning down and you could only grab a few, that would be one.
This would be one of them. And it sounds, it's kind of crazy, but like, I would have told you when I was a kid that I hated country music.
Yeah.
But like getting a piece of work like this where I got to hear a committed body of songs with different songwriters, different musicians a part of it. Like this record kind of introduced me to like the beauty of good country music.
Yeah. That's awesome.
You know, and then you dig in, you start to hear other voices. You're like, whoa, that reminds me of Jackson Browne. And you're like, oh, whoa, I should check out that other Jackson Browne record. Or like, man, why does this remind me of the Eagles when I listen to this Jackson Browne record? Oh, he wrote that song for the Eagles. You know, like, I don't know. It's like, it's a never-ending journey.
So what albums and artists inspire you to create?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Honestly, and you know, we've talked before, but I would say that any album by Stevie Wonder inspires me, encourages me, humbles me, discourages me. Like, I listen to a Stevie Wonder record, I'm like, I'll never be able to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to do that, but how did he do that?
He would just like...
Could I do that?
Yeah. He'd go over to the drummer, knock him out of the way, grab his sticks, and just...
that's so many of his records, but even the Music of My Mind record, which I think is like 69, 70, he played like most of that stuff.
Yeah.
There's a song on that record called Superwoman, and it's like a opus. It's like 7 or 8 minutes long. I mean, he like had the extended cuts.
Yeah, I need to listen to more Stevie Wonder, but when like we first met, you were like, I have all the Stevie Wonder records that I could possibly have, and I was like, challenge accepted.
No, you proved that
and
today.
I'm like, I will find
Stevie
you
at the beach.
Yeah, that's right. So I've got you a couple that you hadn't had.
Stevie Wonder really inspires me, and then there are like small obscure artists that nobody's heard, or there's smaller obscure artists that a lot of people haven't heard that inspire me because they're still doing it. Like, I will make no secret that Starflyer 59 is one of my favorite bands of all time. Well, it's essentially like one guy's recording project at this point. But I mean, we're talking over 20 years in. He's still making records, and he will commit to a theme on a record. He still makes albums. Like what he's able to do with guitar sounds, with drum sounds, it like literally like propels me to keep going and try things. Even in seasons where I'm not writing as much, like, and I get in this place where I can only listen to so much music before I'm like, I have to make something.
Yeah.
And then I'll have a period of like making music where I'm like, I gotta go listen to other music I've been to in my head. So for me, there's this kind of ebb and flow.
I don't even know what these records are over here, but they're your little note cards.
My little note cards.
Big note cards.
That's what I love about Paul McCartney as well.
Yeah.
Like, I know this isn't the Beatles podcast, but good grief. Like, for me, there's something to love about all of them, and they all contributed something. Yeah. So did George Martin. We all know that. Yeah. But Paul McCartney, for me, one of my favorite albums that I haven't mentioned is the album Ram by Paul McCartney. And it's technically Paul and Linda, but it's pre-Wings. I think it came after Paul McCartney won.
Yeah.
Which I think Paul McCartney won was kind of rushed because he wanted to get his out first.
Yeah. I don't actually... I mean... Yeah, I've not heard anything about the time frame, but Ringo's first record was really actually pretty good.
Yeah.
But, nobody... I just got it the other day.
Well,
And it's actually not bad. Everybody gives Ringo a hard time. But yeah, Paul McCartney's amazing. My kids love, there's this Paul McCartney song called New. It's
Yeah.
Pie with a Chance of Meatballs. And like, they love that. It's their favorite song. And they sing it. And like, you know.
It's a whole different generation.
Yeah, and they can barely speak, but they're singing like this song from the guy that wrote the songs I love when I was a kid. It's like, oh man, it's so cool.
That is what's so crazy. Watching my son interact with some of the records that I've loved, like one of the first vinyls that Henry really responded to was a Linda Ronstadt retrospective record I had.
Yeah, I've seen some records some videos of him dancing to some Stevie Wonder and like.
Dude, or like something more modern that has old influences. The War on Drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Lost in the Dream is one of my favorite albums that's been put out in the last 5 years.
I got that yesterday. I'm super excited.
It's one of my. I bought that on vinyl the day it came out. I was in Kansas City. I've introduced my son to it, and even since he was just barely in a diaper, he was headbanging to it.
Is there like a song that is like one that you turn it on and he's gonna be dancing like?
Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney have done a lot of funny little duets over the years, and there's a Paul McCartney record. I can't think of the name right now. It's Blue and Red, and it's Stevie's on 1 or 2 in the tracks, but there's this song called What's That You're Doing? It's like, what's that you're doing? Stevie comes in, and then, I mean, it's a goofy song. Henry will boogie to that song, and it's totally it's Paul and Stevie.
That's hilarious.
It's like, it's not. I think it's the same record that has Ebony and Ivory on it.
Okay,
but it's like just funky
hilarious.
Synthy bass. It's like something people would make now.
Stevie Wonder has played on so much and like written so much.
Yeah,
I don't know if I told you. I think I did. I found a record. It's called Magic. It's like a late '60s psychedelic record, and I'm reading the personnel, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Stevie Wonder played keys on this.
And there he is. Like, I mean, there's records that he's even produced or played on that I've heard him talk about in interviews that you can't find. They're out of print. And I'm like, how could I hear those records?
Yeah.
Because they're even the ones that he still talks about.
We're at, what records have you recently been listening to, and what are you currently working on? That can be...
Yes.
Whatever. I haven't even really looked at what you got over here too much.
One of my longtime friends who actually really introduced me to the love of vinyl, his name was Nick Simon. He showed up in a truck, and on the day before my wedding, he said, I have a gift for you in the back of the truck. And he gave us like milk crates full of like these amazing records. I mean, a wide range of records. Beatles records, Stevie records, Eagles records, Grateful Dead records, tons of records, like tons of Billie Holiday, Louis Armstrong, like Miles Davis, all these jazz records, binders of old like records. And then he gave us his hi-fi system. So that's like our system. We've only replaced the turntable. And so we keep records like ready to go. Some of our favorite family records right now are, let's see here.
Man.
So I just pulled out, this is kind of just first off the cuff, pulled out Joni Mitchell Blue. This actually belongs to my sister-in-law, and she loves Joni Mitchell, and she doesn't have a turntable. So when she came to visit the last time, she let me hold on to like 5 Joni records. Yeah. So I put this on the other day, and I'm like, what have I been doing with my life? Yeah. I got to get back in here. That's been super fun to listen to. Another kind of obscure, this is a little 3-piece band from Arizona called Fine China. They used to be on Tooth and Nail. Jason from Starflyers produced some of their earlier records. Same with Ronnie with Joy Electric. But they just put out a new record, and I love this album. And he plays like all his guitars through like this little rolling jazz chorus.
That's cool.
It's insane. Let's see. Let's go old. Oh, this is a family favorite right here, and I have you to thank for it. The Zombies, Odyssey and Oracle, 1968. This is a reissue.
Yeah.
I just got to brag on you. You brought this to me and just blew my socks off. Gave this to me as a gift. This is one of my favorite records.
Me too.
And I never thought I could own it on vinyl. But you gave it to me. That would have been cool for me, but I introduced Henry to it, and my wife had never really heard this record, and this is like a family favorite now. When I put this record on,
oh man,
we get down.
Just seeing that cover makes me so happy. Did you know that the artist that drew this, it was not supposed to be spelled wrong. Odyssey spelled wrong, but the artist that drew it spelled it wrong, and that's why they named the album. It's spelled wrong. the album is because of the artwork.
Wow.
That is like...
I'm pretty, like, I notice stuff like that, and I've never noticed that.
But that might be my favorite album ever.
This was a Secret Santa gift last year. This is an album by Q-Tip of A Tribe Called Quest. I have a very strong affinity for hip-hop also. It's not... Like, I don't have a ton of hip-hop on wax. But this is Q-Tip his second solo album. I'm kind of waiting for the next one. This came out, I think, in 2008. Yeah. This is the jam, and he made it all in that classic MPC.
Yeah.
And...
you ever mess with one of those?
Oh, I've always wanted to. This is like my closest I've gotten. There's a cameo from Norah Jones on this album, on the song Life is Better, and it's one of the best things you'll ever hear.
Wow. Did you know... Ravi Shankar,
it's her dad.
It's her dad.
I did know that. I did know
You're
that.
You're a genius.
A lot
of people don't know.
I'm not savvy on some things, but it's the weird details. Just bought this the other day. This is the new album from S. Carey called 100 Acres. I've been listening. I bought a digital copy this year ago. We've listened to it so much that we were like, why don't we have a vinyl? So we went online, bought a copy. It came in the mail the other day. I love this record. It's so beautiful. And he's a drummer. He drums for Bon Iver, but he also is an insane songwriter and plays piano. And, like, just holding the artwork. Because he's also, and I think I would get along well with this guy. He's also a photographer, if you haven't noticed. His photos are insane. Look at that. Incredible. I feel like I'm in, like, the 100 Acre Woods right there. I'm going to pull a crazy one out for you. I pulled this back out. This has a lot of history for me. Leon Russell. This is the Carney record.
Yeah.
I don't really know this whole record as a whole, but there's a couple songs on here that are, like, just so special to me. Like, I love the song Tightrope.
Okay.
Have you ever heard it?
I have that album, and I've had it 100 times, but I've never listened to it. And the other day, I pulled it aside. I said, I'm not going to sell this one. I'm going to listen to it.
Dude, there's a Muppet quality to this album that'll just take you right on back to Jim Henson. There's a song, Tightrope is just classic. You feel like you're watching the Muppets when you're listening to it. And then there's a song called Me and Baby Jane. Oh, I'm going
to listen to it.
Put that in your pocket for later. I'm just going to shout out.
Yeah.
This Linda Ronstadt retrospective. It's two records in here, 4 sides. It's got, like, all the hits, but then some stuff that you can't even get anymore. Like, there's this song called Hobo. She was just, I mean, she's amazing.
You ever listen to Stone Ponies?
Like,
I've got some of
This is kind of from that era, though. There's tracks on here that are from the late 60s, and it's the stuff that's not, you can't even go on iTunes and get. Like the song Hobo, that's a great song, and it's only, like, on this album. Cool. I've been listening to this for a decade.
That's great.
And then last album for now, this guy's a friend of mine, Matthew Perryman Jones. This is not his newest record, but the one before. It's called Land of the Living. The personnel on this record, the sounds, the engineering, everything from, like, the snare reverb to the guitars is beautiful on its own, but the songwriting itself, golly.
Yeah, and we were talking, like, maybe a month ago, and you were telling me how you saw them in Charlotte recently, and I was like, I've not heard of them, and I listened, and I was like, wow, I really,
the song Land of the Living itself, that's a great record. So that's some of what our family's been listening to, and then we have, like, just some old standbys that I like to pull out on, like, Sundays. Like,
talk about an album that
Stephen Stills' Manassas.
That is such a awesome, just complete work. You can't just listen to one song. It's
my gosh.
That's oh my gosh.
Like the song Colorado, I just got goosebumps thinking about it.
Have you ever listened to Manassas 2?
No.
It's hard to find. I have it.
I would love to hear that. There's a sound to this record and just a quality to his voice in this era. Yeah. And I think, too, the personnel that he was playing with that made this record. Yeah. I mean, I actually am not a huge Crosby, Stills, and Nash, like, fan. I've enjoyed their music, but I've never sought out their records. But for some reason, I bought this, and it became one of my favorites. So this is a mainstay for us.
I'm glad you have that.
Those are just a few. I could go on, but you know how those things go. We have a Billie Holiday record that my wife just adores. That gets played at least once a week. Yeah. And Henry loves it.
Gosh, that's so good. Man, I'm so glad you let me come over and talk about records, because every time I talk to you about records, I learn like things I've never heard of before, and I got to go home and listen to them. So that that S. Carey, I got to listen to that. And man, but so you roast coffee.
Yes.
Which is just the best thing for the world.
Yes.
And you write songs. Tell me about your life and like your creative future.
Yes.
What are you working on?
Yes. So as part of the Cageless Birds Collective, we host a lot of schools and camps and retreats, and typically 6 months out of the year we're doing something with any number of those things.
Yeah.
And I love it. Like, we call our school the School of the Heart, and we do a lot with the creative arts, but it's all gospel based. Mm-hmm. And we work with a lot of young adults, but really all ages, especially with our retreat.
Yeah.
And I love that. We just actually closed up that season, and we're actually going into what we sometimes refer to as our creative season, where we're just like working on projects, and just kind of refilling and getting ready for another year. And we've actually got an album that we're working on that's being produced by Stephen Price, who's amazing. Yeah. He's based in High Point, North Carolina. And we're making a collective album. I've got a track on there that I'm really excited about. Good. There are strings on it. It is
I've heard you play it live. I've not heard, when is it coming?
I think our album's coming. I think it's a winter. We're pushing for like a winter release, but the first single is actually going to get dropped in a couple weeks when we do a night in Charleston, and it's going to Molly's.
I don't know if you know this.
What?
I'm going to be there.
Come on.
I've got tickets.
That's going to be so good.
I got actually we got an Airbnb in Charleston. We're going to stay, and I'm bringing like 10 other people.
Come on.
So we're going to be there. So,
dude, we're dropping our first single from that album, which is Molly's version of Ain't No Grave.
Yeah.
And Luke plays fiddle on it, and
I can't wait.
Mel's vocals on it, Molly's vocals on it.
Yeah.
It's really, really good.
I can't wait to hear that. I mean, I've heard those things live, but
yes, we're just really excited to get more music made in the next season. I'm ready for it. So I'm ready to press in as a songwriter. I'm starting to dream in that way again. And then just growing as a visual artist. I'm just so passionate about getting gear in people's hands and then teaching them how to tell that story. So
did you take a break from songwriting for a few years? To focus on coffee, or have you always done it?
No, I've always done it.
Yeah.
It just kind of went on the back burner a bit because so much of my brain space was going towards pioneering something new.
Yeah.
But in that season, I was listening to more music than I would have if I was writing music. I keep a hi-fi system in the space where we roast, and in the wintertime, you'll catch us listening to anything from Jackson Browne to Cocteau Twins, and that's just the way it goes. Just to say it too, I just so appreciate what you're doing, and I love your value for people, and I love that you respect even the medium of vinyl and carry a passion for connecting people with it. But most of all, I just love your heart for people.
Thank you.
Because as much as we're sitting here talking about wax, we couldn't do that if it weren't for the people that made it, and then the people on the other side. And you've been so generous, even with me. So thank you. I
love the stuff that you create, and if I can be a part of that in any way and helping get something in your hands that will make you spark your creativity, that's my honor. So I
Come on. Oh, one more thing.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you a question.
Yes.
Have you ever been featured on vinyl as a musician of any kind?
Here's the deal with that. Yes and no. I went to Third Man and recorded a single. And it sounds pretty bad. I mean, because of the machine's 100,000 years old, and that's just the way they all sound. I was really excited about it, but it's hard to listen to, so no. That's the only one. So, but one day
it's gonna happen for you.
It will happen, and it's my dream, and I know it's probably a lame dream, but it's my dream to record an album just to have it for my kids, And I've got a bunch of songs that I've worked on, and it will happen before I die, hopefully, unless something happens early or something.
I've got one cameo on vinyl.
Yeah,
one cameo. I did BGVs on a record called Acor for an artist named Josh White, and it's on Tooth and Nail Records.
Huh. When was that?
You'll hear my little voice singing on there, my little early 20s.
I will listen to that.
The album's called Acor. The artist is Josh White. It was put out by BEC, which is Tooth and Nail subsidiary. Yeah. And
That's cool.
It's a bunch of people I went to church with in Portland, and
Wow.
we did this live tracking thing. So all the vocals were like, we're in a round with microphones, and what we did is what's on there. No auto-tune. But it's cool. It's a fun little record.
Are you guys going to ever put your stuff on vinyl?
I hope so.
You've got to.
This album coming out is just going to be so lush. It would be dumb if we didn't.
Yes.
That's my dream.
Okay, well,
I think if the demand's there, I know it's expensive to do that stuff, but I think it's worth it. I want to put it in my kids' hands.
I mean, I was talking to John Mark McMillan the other day.
Oh, man.
And he was talking about how, like, it's incredible to him that he thought, he didn't think it would be as big of a deal as it is, but everything he puts on vinyl, it's just like they sell so much of it and sell out.
And he does it right, too. I saw Mercury and Lightning the other day, the packaging of it, and I was like, this is so good. This is the way I'd want to, like, engage this album.
Well, the thing is, and I think your audience would really eat it up. Yeah. And if not, I would just buy all the copies and give them away.
Oh, I'd want some copies, too.
Yeah. So, anyways, well, man, thank you so much for the time. I know Saturdays are sacred and
dude,
all that stuff.
worth it.
So, yeah, man.